Do you think this is going to be accepted?
We've recommended it. We hope it will do. It doesn't cover the cost of living crisis that we've seen in the last 5 years, but remembering we're not seeking a pay rise for the 2 years of COVID. The deal covers the last 2 years of the dispute where inflation averaged over 25%.
The Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson told Times Radio half an hour ago that she wanted to avoid industrial action and support workers, which explains that Labour is offering train drivers a 14.25% pay rise over 3 years. Is that enough for Mick Whelan, the General Secretary of the Train Drivers Union, Aslef? We can speak to him now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Do you think this is going to be accepted?
We've recommended it. We hope it will do. It doesn't cover the cost of living crisis that we've seen in the last 5 years, but remembering we're not seeking a pay rise for the 2 years of COVID. The deal covers the last 2 years of the dispute where inflation averaged over 25%. So effectively, we are taking a pay cut. And of course, it covers this year as well because we're halfway through it and just about meets inflation. But we are pleased that someone actually sat down and spoke to us with somebody that's interested in the future of the railways and wants industrial harmony.
A lot of listeners getting in touch. Some support what's going on here, and some obviously don't. And I suppose the question is this: is that the cost of living? Is it fair to say it affects people in different ways? That it affects someone who's on £65,000 in a different way to someone who's on £18,000 or £25,000?
Well, unfortunately, we work for privateers who openly boast about the free money they were getting from the previous government, whose executives are getting £800,000 in bonuses, whose shareholders are making millions and millions off the taxpayer in an industry that doesn't return any surpluses. Yet the people who actually do the work and haven't had a pay rise for 5 years, we're apparently the ones that are wrong.
Did you understand the point that I was making about the cost of living? Yeah.
And my members understand the cost of living. Our wages aren't linked to fares. Fares are automatically set by the previous government's mechanism. They go up every January by RPI. It's got nothing to do with us. The privatised system that drains hundreds of millions of pounds out of the system that could be used for investment or funding wages isn't down to us. What is down to us is the fact that we've got people who have given massive productivity over the years and the flexibility that the industry wanted. And someone decided that we, like many other people, shouldn't have a cost of living increase. Now, we just want to come to work, do our jobs and feed our families like anybody else.
Do you think there's some people getting in touch, Mick Whelan, who say, actually, fair enough, you should get that. However, there should be something coming the other way, some strings. In other words, being asked to increase efficiency and productivity.
Well, the real problem, and I apologise for cutting across you, is you can only drive one train at one time. So actually, people who know about train drivers, they can be rostered up to 60 or 70 hours a week. You know that they work shifts, antisocial. You work up to 12 hours a day. Nobody could tell us in the last 2 years on the other side about these amazing strings that they'll reform that they wanted. Basically, what they wanted to do was not recruit enough people to actually cover the industry and force people to work their time off rather than having the right number of people employed. And that's not something we're going to subscribe to.
Right. OK. So some people getting in touch saying, how is it right that Sunday services only run on the basis of voluntary overtime? That's something that actually perhaps should have been offered coming the other way.
Well, if the people involved could afford to put Sundays in the working week and recruit the people to make the 25% increase in employees, it would happen. But let's actually deal with that falsehood that's been about a trope for some period of time. In the 14 companies that, in the political dispute caused by the Tory government, 12 of them had committed Sundays or Sundays in the working week. And the two that didn't were caused by privatisation and those companies not being able to afford to put those terms and conditions on the table. And in those companies, the drivers earn significantly less than other drivers within the industry.
Do you accept, and I'm sure you've seen the polls, and maybe you don't mind actually, but, because there are people who get in touch with us and say, OK, yes, they should get pay rises because other people are. But when it comes to public sector workers going on strike or asking for more money, for example, nurses, teachers, whatever, train drivers come up pretty low in that table. So people like nurses and teachers will come above you. There'll be more support. Presumably that's because of the level of the wages. Is that something that you can understand?
I can understand that. But you'll also understand that nobody ever gave us anything. We don't walk into a room and someone says, "Here, we'll throw barrels of money at you." They changed the industry. We've given flexibility and productivity to generate the salaries that we've got, and we've paid for what we've got. What I will say is I think it's disgusting in the 21st century that people with vocations such as teachers and nurses and healthcare professionals aren't paid a decent living wage. And surely the argument shouldn't be the politics of envy. It should be maybe we should pay everybody the right money rather than trying to drag people down and defend people that are in other sectors being forced to use food banks where they work, because that is wrong.
Do you think is this the end of it, Mick Whelan? If this is if this is accepted, is this it now, or do you think we're going to be having this conversation in another couple of years?
Well, this is it. Look, we welcome the 2 bills that are going through Parliament. The anachronism that the British government has been allowed to run its own trains since 1993. So when that act is undone and the bill passing for GBR, which then will take away the silo mentality and give us the economies of scale and synergies that we get with nationalisation and a vertically integrated, safer railway, I have great hope for the future.
Okay. Well, let's hope so. That is Mick Whelan, the General Secretary of the Train Drivers Union, Aslef.
People have very strong views on this. This is the pro view from Andrew. The only way to resolve these Aslef disputes was to get back around the table and compromise. It was grandstanding that created the impasse and inertia of the past 2 years. Disputes are resolved through compromise. Both sides had to settle. Just glad the turmoil is over for now. But someone else saying, utter joke. The unions have helped Labour into power and have got their pay off in return. Who runs the Labour Party? Paul says the unions were deliberately uncooperative when in pay negotiations with the Conservatives and took the calculated gamble that when Labour were finally elected, they would then receive generous pay awards without the requirement for changes in their working practices. And that gamble paid off. A lot of people making the point that you made to Mick there, Asma, that some people think that driving a train isn't worth 70 grand a year, however you cut it. And that's just an issue that people will have.